who's coming up now, Mike van der Heijden, who is going to talk to us about search. Sorry, this is a nice seamless way to actually introduce Mike. So thank you, Peter, for that. So thank you very much. And Mike,
thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Actually, a perfect segue, and I appreciate everyone for being here this morning. I know it could have gone one or two ways. So today, what I really wanted to talk to you about was not so much the AI of what portals can do for the experience on the portal, but we're talking more about what portals can do using AI to keep pumping the traffic back into their systems. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing SEO, or search engine optimization, now for the past 17 years. I helped grow two of Australia's largest search agencies, then founded Portal.Ventures with Matt Kerr here and Tim Hanley. And I've done some strategic advisory work around SEO, which grew Portal.Ventures, which is now a global SEO search consultancy and specializing in just online marketplaces, not just classified, not just automotive. We arrange anyone for finance to travel to e-commerce. And so far in the last couple of years, we've done about analysis on about 150 plus different marketplaces. And some of the marketplaces that we work with range anywhere from sort of publications like Media House, News Corp, to real estate, James Edition, Real Advisor, Latam Autos in the automotive space, Luxury Escapes, Fresher. There's a whole suite of different marketplaces. So today, I really want to talk about 4 key points. So first of all, why are we talking about Google? I think the answer is pretty obvious. How Google and search have evolved, and again, we're just tying it back to Google simply because they've got the inventory. How SEO and search will continue to evolve, which kind of answers Stephen's questions before, and what can you as a marketplace continue to do to ensure that you keep getting that traffic. Right, so why are we talking about SEO? Can raise your hand if your business relies on eyeballs that need to be generated off-site your platform. I think everyone here is pretty much in that position, right? And so we're talking about a collective 9.5 billion searches per day that happen on the search engines. That equates to about 285 billion searches per month, or about 3.4 trillion searches per year. So we can understand that Google by itself is pretty much the largest portal in the world. To put that into scale, Google by itself generates about 8.5 billion of those searches every single day. The next closest competitor being Bing, which does about roughly 900 million searches, right? A fun little fact which goes into what Simon was saying before, where we've gone from a query-based search approach to, hey, we're continuing to evolve the search queries and the queries that we use. We keep getting more specific. Google ran into a problem about 3 or 4 years ago where they said that Google was basically 15% of those 8.5 billion searches per day had never ever been searched before. So this was new inventory that was coming to market. They didn't know how to handle it. And so it became very important for them to find out what's next. How can they help you, the consumer, better serve their needs? Serve your needs. And obviously, this is a graph you might have seen in a few presentations before. I think Malcolm had a version of this as well. Organic search continues to be one of the most powerful traffic sources for marketplaces, right? We look at real estate, where as of February, 42% of their overall traffic is organic traffic. Zillow, 45% of all traffic is organic, and then Rightmove up to 49% now. So really what we should do is take a step back. Everyone is excited about the large language models, the large action models, and AI, but really, when you think about what Google and how Google and search have evolved, we've kind of already had an inclination of what's happened, right? So really, I'm going to take a step back. It's about 10 years. I'll keep it really light and quick. But Google in 2014 obviously knew they had a lot of data. We're here to serve the best information for you. We catalog your information. And it got to a point where they introduced what's now called Google Knowledge Vault. And it's basically a machine-readable encyclopedia. It stored information with reference points. And it understood that content, your content, is super important. But a couple of things that they introduced around that is, it wanted to know if the content was actually written by someone with expertise in the field. It wanted to understand that that person was actually an authority in that field, or had some expertise or first-hand experience, and that the source was trustworthy, right? So Google started doing this back in 2014. Fast forward, about a year later, Google said that, if we recall, 15% of the keywords that people typed into Google had never been searched before. So what Google released is what it's called RankBrain. So what is RankBrain? It was basically Google's way of trying to understand the user query. So previously, if you wanted the grey search console developed by Sony, and your mate on the other side would search for the Sony PlayStation, it wouldn't have an understanding that the grey search console was the same thing as the PlayStation. RankBrain sought to put the two together and understand that, hey, this is actually the context of a query. About 3 years later, Google released BERT, or the contextual machine learning algorithm. It now went from understanding your query to understanding the context of your query. Oh, sorry, this is still a RankBrain slide, my bad. Machine learning aims to understand your query and in real time updates the algorithm based on the user experience. So if you type this in, you go to the website, you are not happy, it takes that into consideration when it starts ranking websites. In 2018, it released another update to its algorithm called BERT. BERT was essentially, it's called a bidirectional transformer model. And what it did was, it didn't just look at your search query, so your PlayStation. It also looked at what's in front and what's behind it. So it looked at the context of the overall query. And so when you're faced with something like a good example being, he was bitten by a python. So you and I can confer out of that is a snake, right? But someone else might write, Python is my favorite programming language. So in that context, Google would try to understand, is Python the snake or is it Python the search language, or the programming language? So it's a bidirectional transformer model. In addition to now understanding your query, it now also started to understand the context of your query. And so again, it keeps updating the algorithm based on what it knows and how you interact with the search engine. Now in 2021, there was the AI advancement, or multi-model algorithm that was designed to break the language barriers. So we now know that Google knows your query, it understands what you're searching for, it understands the context, but it was still sort of refined or limited to text-based. Now, with the advancement of the MUM algorithm update, it now sought to understand, right, your query, your context, I know what you want, but I'm going to give it to you across text, video, imagery, and everything else. So when you think about the slides that we've seen in the last day or so, and even this morning, talking about image search, image recognition, Google already understood this a long time ago and has been training us, the consumers, on how to search for it. So again, it was a multitask unified model. We now understand your query, your context across multiple languages and across multiple mediums. And it claimed to be 1,000 times more powerful than the last release they did 3 years earlier. Obviously, Google has evolved even further. It now knows your context, it knows what you're looking for, but it also wants to know that you've got first-hand experience. So it's no longer about me writing about rocket science. I've got absolutely no credibility whatsoever. So how does Google weight that information on my article versus someone else's content? And now what everyone is obviously excited by is Google's generative search AI, which when you really think about it, is just another interpretation really of what the portals are trying to do with the chatbots, right? I want to go to Maui. What are the things that I can do in Maui? It will keep prompting you for the next search, which is key. Because prompting for the next search is where we've been trained to continuously refine our searches. But again, search generative AI isn't super helpful just yet. If you have a look for a 2-bedroom apartment for sale in Madrid, it'll happily spit out some relevant information that there's Madrid capital and Madrid province. Great, but I can't do anything with this. There is no links, there's no context. It's still very experimental, right? Where do I see things going, or what's next? I don't know if anyone here has read about Rabbit R1. It's basically a new handheld device, about half the size of an iPhone, and their aim is to be your personal assistant. Not just a large language model that will spit facts back to you, but it will actually be able to tell hey, Rabbit, please order me a pizza from Papa John's, 12-inch with pepperoni, and it will go, great, here's your order, please confirm, done. No more needing to go into apps, no more needing to go to book your haircut, it can all be done with your voice search. And so what have we learned over the last decade? So Google has invested a lot of interest in continuing to better understand us, our intent, our history, and our future needs, right? And so to do that, it needs factual, correct information from trusted experts and authority, you guys, and preferably first-hand experience. But guess what? We and you have already been supplying the search engines with this information, Bing, Google, whatever, as a supplier through letting them basically consume the content that's already on your websites, and as a consumer because we've been teaching them how we want to search for our properties, and hence it's been able to evolve its search. So how do I think search and SEO are going to evolve in the next few years? Like I said, search engines have been training us to search better. So it understands your search history now without prompting it. It understands it will carry the context of your question throughout your entire journey. Looking for a 2-bedroom house in Madrid, great, what features would you like? Would you like 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms? It will continue to understand the query. And this means that the searches are vastly getting more and more long tail. When we say long tail, they're getting longer and longer and longer. It's no longer property for sale in Madrid. It's a 2-bedroom apartment for sale in Madrid with a 2-car garage near public transport. And so this is the introduction, or I want to introduce you to what's called the search demand curve. So on the side axis, we've got search volume, how many people search for this particular query every single month. And then the bottom line here is how long are these queries, the number of keywords in those queries, and how more likely they're to convert based on how specific the searches are, right? So right at the very top, everyone wants to rank in Google for apartments for sale in Madrid because 1 million people search for it a month. But guess what? It's not that relevant if I'm ranking for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment for sale in Madrid. It's much more likely for that search to convert. And even better, if I've got 2-bedroom apartment in Madrid with a 2-car garage and public transport, and I can show you those results, again, I'm more likely to convert that user, right? And so what's happening now is we're moving away from the shorter queries, the very narrow queries that used to dominate and everyone was excited about, is only accounting now for about 25% of overall search in Google. When you consider the long tail traffic, and this is just the end of the graph, it's not the end, it keeps going forever, comes back to those 1.5 billion searches every single day that haven't been searched for, will continue to grow this graph over time. So marketplaces really need to understand and address these long tail queries. It's great to use all sorts of different AI tools to enrich your data, but literally what you've got is, again, you've got your listing over here, a Zillow example. What we want to know is people want to know, I'm looking for a house with a pool, with a courtyard, near public schools, under $1 million with a view. So there's one property that can apply to many, many different searches over time. So the way to think about it, and this is my great graphic skills coming out here, think of your inventory as a sort of 3-dimensional index, right? That one particular listing in Miami can actually apply to thousands of different permutations based on the user queries. It's a house with a home, it's a house with a pool, it's a house with a view, it's a house with a balcony, it's near transport. And so what you're getting is a 3-dimensional index of where these listings sit and how you can grow the inventory. Now, obviously, we're not just changing, Google is also changing. For some people here, they might remember the 10 blue links that used to dominate Google. Obviously, no longer more. This is a search for a 2-bedroom condo for sale in Patamwan. The first red section here is the above the fold. You've got ads, you've got generative AI, and then right down the bottom here are your little green organic results. So they're also evolving where previously, if you ranked #1 for that specific query as a portal, you were super happy, you would get about 27% of that overall search volume, right? That's no longer the case because of search generative AI. Previously, at any given time, 65% odd of users that would search on Google would click on one of the organic results. And like I said, if you previously ranked #1, you could expect about 28% of that query to land on your portal. Now, if you were #5 or #6, and you improved your organic rankings to be in a position 1, there's 5 times the amount of traffic in that. When you consider the amount of inventory you have, this is where you can see where companies like Rightmove, REA are really dominating search because they've got this inventory available. Unfortunately, estimates, and these are only estimates, we don't know, it hasn't been rolled out, but estimates predict organic search traffic will drop around 40% on any query that now renders a search generative AI experience. And so that kind of leaves us a question of what do we do? We're going to lose a lot of traffic. When in actual fact, the game still very much remains the same. Some people here might remember Google trying to go into real estate, right? They had a lot of data, or at least they thought they had a lot of data. Whatever excuse they needed to pull out, granted. But then you've had vertical search. You had guys like Matula who basically took the same data set, were a little better at processing it for the long tail search, and then serve it back to you. Now what we've got is Bing search, or Bing real estate, I think they called it, which in actual fact, people are losing their mind going, oh my God, Bing is going into the portal space. It makes sense. The data has gotten better over time, so Bing has said, well, hang on, your data set is better. We'll take that data and we'll refine it because guess what? We have the eyeballs. We have the 900 million searches a day. So really, what can marketplaces do? I think the one key thing that I want to get across is that there's absolutely no worry you shouldn't be worried about losing your mind, losing your traffic. The key thing that you want to continue to focus on is you need to be the absolute best source of your data. I think Simon had that slide before, and you need to make that data available to whoever is the audience. We need to stop worrying about, oh my God, online organic traffic is going to drop from this source, my brand traffic will drop from that source. It's about if you continue to have the best source of information on your site, and you have a way of making that available to the search engines, to Facebook, to whoever, then you'll be okay. So the strategy is very much the same. The tactics have improved. And I realized Malcolm and I used the same slide, so we must be great minds thinking alike there. But when you're talking about SEO, great, free text search is one of the areas that is getting really prevalent. But keep understanding that free text search in a portal does not necessarily mean that Google can do that search or Bing can do that search on your portal. You still need to make that available to them, because ultimately they will not interpret your listing data. You need to do this for them, right? So we look at AI tools for data analysis, improving listing descriptions. In Australia, for example, we're testing List Assist, the company. The problem is real estate agents in Australia will want to rank for their particular address, and they'll Google you, or they'll Google themselves every single morning, and if they're not there, you're going to get a phone call. What you're up against is companies like REA, Domain, who just take a big aggregate, and they've all got the same information. So we said, well, hang on a second. What is really different, besides obviously them being two Goliaths, is if we publish different information about this property, or we use AI-generated content to show something different than what the agent's written, we've actually started seeing improvements where we've seen examples of where we're outranking Domain, or in some cases REA, for these specific address searches, because we're serving up better or more enriched content. And then we want to use it for analyzing trends and anticipating trends going forward. And the second part is you need to nail that long tail inventory and search strategy. It's great if you're labeling all this with your filters online in the portals, but if you're not making this data available to the search engines can't get to it, and your traffic will drop off over time. What we need to take into consideration is, as the last point here, is the forms by which users meet their information needs, they'll continue to fracture. And we'll start moving away from optimizing for the web, and we'll start optimizing for the large language models and eventually the large action models. If you do those two things right, Google will reward you, the search engines will reward you, because if you continue to be better than the rest, provide more data, better data than the rest, you're going to be the source of truth, and that's the aim of the game. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, and there are a heap of questions. What are some of the good ways for portals to up their EAT game?
Good question. So Google, the EAT, the expertness, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness isn't necessarily a scoring metric. It's just about the overall perceived credibility of someone who wrote the content. I could sit here and write about an investment strategy for your investment portfolio, but Google will understand that Mike van der Heijden is an SEO guy. He should probably stick to that, right? It understands who writes the content, and now it's becoming more important. So having people on your team that are actually experts or actually know the field that they're talking about adds a lot of credibility to the content for portals.
Okay. Should we be concerned about Google detecting and de-indexing AI-generated
Probably
text?
the most asked question I've had this year. There's two concepts here, right? There is Google generating a blog post about curing a disease and you publishing and pawning it off as being an expertly written article. Yes, Google in the last month has de-indexed, I think they're up to a couple of 100,000 websites now where people were just pretending to be experts. Now, will Google actually go and track your portal and say, well, this description was AI generated? It doesn't care. It's factual information. You can write it in many different ways. Google will not touch you. But if you're going to try and palm off expert advice as your own when it's clearly not, Google can detect it and, yeah, it won't end well.
Okay, as non-SEO experts, what's the easiest way for marketplaces to start mastering long-tail search queries?
Great question. I think it comes down to Simon's slide before. It's not, don't think about this as an SEO play. It's thinking about how can I enrich this listings data? How can I have more points of reference for this listing data, which is going to be good for your internal search. And those long-tail permutations can eventually become an SEO strategy. But the underlying thing is here, you need the data to be able to create these long-tail queries.
What do you think about moving users from search engines like Google to ChatGPT to get more personalized search results? I think it's users moving from the other way around. Okay, right now I can ask ChatGPT to give me a list of apartments with links on portals, to give me the pros and cons, to describe locations, and so on and so on and so on.
Great.
Yeah, does ChatGPT become the Google of the future?
I think the other way around. ChatGPT opened their eyes and brought forward this context of large language models, which is basically spit back information based on what I give you. And great, ChatGPT is great, Perplexity is great, there's lots of GPT engines out there, but ultimately there will be nothing without the data that you provide them. Without your access and your listings, ChatGPT's got nothing to refer to. So okay. I don't think it's a threat as long as you understand the aim of the game is to make sure that your data is the best available and continues to be the best available to the search engines and the GPTs.
How can newer marketplaces compete in SEO with well-established portals with millions of dollars of money spent on content over a decade or so? Seems like a lost cause.
It does sound like that, doesn't it? But I just want to remind you again that those 1.5 billion searches every single day are searches that have never been searched before. And it's almost impossible for a portal to preemptively know what these 1.5 billion searches are going to be. So if you continue to understand where the search is going and how you can answer longer queries and more specific queries better, you'll have an edge. There's established portals in the UK markets, Australian markets that still haven't mastered this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to think about is that it's very hard to become an expert in both short tail or whatever they call it,
yeah.
Right? Head tail, the head SEO search and long tail. Yeah. And if you go back, because the next question is regarding Matula, so I'll link it back to that. Matula purposely went after long tail, didn't worry about the head, where all the portals local were going after, and we generated millions and millions of eyeballs. We built a business around Google at the end of the day by focusing on the long tail search, which is really what you're talking about here.
Absolutely,
okay.
100%.
Okay. Now, what's the bottom line is Google does updates to algorithms all the time. Those algorithms can de-rank you for whatever reason. And if you and regarding the lost a lot of traffic, that's we're now going back 8 years, right? So everything was far more rudimentary in those days. And if Google updated something, and you then had to, when they updated something, you got de-ranked, and then everyone scrambled. Everyone literally works around the clock to do re-indexing or changing the way they present stuff and so on. And that's a common occurrence.
Absolutely. I think what's also important to understand is right now it's Google driving traffic to you, and it still needs your data. Bing has already gone into real estate again, but it's not stopping Google from also going back into real estate now that the data sets are more complete. Doesn't change the fact that you'll be missing out on traffic, it'll just change the way it gets to you. But as long as you're still that source of data, you will still get the end result, because I don't see Google or Bing going into any transaction models anytime soon.
No. And now, which relates into the next question, and I actually wrote this question because I was thinking, what percentage of, because for search by map is an interesting way to think about it, and you showed Bing Maps, right? And a lot of people are now using Google Maps as the search engine. What percentage of the searches are done on Google Maps versus the Google?
I'm not certain on Google Maps. That was actually a screenshot of Bing Real Estate. So that's Bing Real Estate, which incorporates the map search. But I don't have the number on how many people actually search on Google Maps. Okay,
because I assume a lot of people are using Google Maps as the search. You type in the restaurant or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. For different types of queries, it'll either pull in the map or they will actually go to Maps to do the search.
Yep. Yeah. How do you guys actually help portals, and how much do you charge?
That's a conversation that, well, typically what we do is we help on a consultancy basis. So we ultimately look at your platform and go, okay, this is where you're at. This is the total addressable market that we know about, being the search volume. And we go, how do we realistically get the platform from A to point B? And basically plot out everything in between. And the way that we do it is on a consulting basis. We're not developers. We just have done it so many times that we know the areas and the levers to pull. And we want your team to be able to implement that. So ultimately, the intellectual property sits with you, not with an agency. And that's sort of where we're a little bit different than a typical agency.
Okay. Last question. Why wouldn't Google have a crack at the portal business, or another crack at the
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. I think what's happened is Google tried to do this a little bit too early and realized it had advertising reasons, whatever, but now that the data sets are becoming more and more complete, I don't see a reason why Google wouldn't enter the portal business, just as much as I wouldn't expect it to be strange for the MLS to have some sort of portal play, because they've got a complete captive market on all the US data. Yep. So I wouldn't rule it out at all.
No, but I'll give you a contrarian view. I don't think they will. So if you think about the previous attempt by Google and real estate was on Google Maps.
Yep.
And Google Maps was headquartered where? Sydney, Australia. And why did they look at it? Because you had REA and Domain. It was all the rage. We're talking about 2005, maybe?
Yeah.
Because I remember I was sitting there and I was getting the phone call from John Heijden and the CEO of News Corp News Limited going, what are you doing about this? And I go, what do you want me to do about it, right? It's Google. Right? I can't do anything about this. But what was interesting, it was really fundamentally in their sandbox type world, because Google Maps at that point wasn't really a mainstream product that it is today. We tend to forget that. And they were just putting the listings they could get hold of onto the maps. People weren't engaging with it. It was not providing them with, because once again, you've got to think about how people search. And with real estate, we've spent 25 years teaching people to search by pictures. You get a list of pictures and you scroll through them and you're image searching. You don't sit there and read all the text on the right-hand side, because remember, all portals are basically the same list. Left-hand side is the image, right-hand side is the text. Show me one that isn't. Okay? So we've educated globally an audience on how to search. And for Google to then have to think about how would it replicate that.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be very hard. And then the question is the monetization model. And the monetization model is hyper-local. You have people who are on the ground talking to real estate agents in every single market, trying to get them to pay the money, knocking on their doors, trying to get the money. They're not going to put teams on the ground.
No,
they've got this incredibly wonderful self-serve model that's pumping out money like you wouldn't believe. Why would you create a headache for yourself? You're better off going after jobs. You're better off going after other segments of the market where you're dealing with a professional audience. I'm not saying real estate agents aren't professional, but when you're dealing with companies, with a recruitment team internally that needs to generate leads, you're going to have, it's a very different game that you're dealing with. Mike, thanks very much.
No
I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone found that super interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.